The United States Navy has a big problem. It's been called the U.S. Navy dilemma. The U.S. Navy is aging faster than it's building ships and not repairing ships fast enough. They'll add 10 new ships while retiring 19 ships in 2025. The Navy yards in the United States has faced significant labor shortages, so the Navy will decline by 9 ships in 2025, which would put the total fleet at 287 ships. This is an interesting chart I made from the data from the U.S. Navy. We can see that there's a peak in the 1950s to the 1960s from World War II afterwards, and then a steep decline in the 70s to 80s, and then finally into 2000s, the Navy's size has been reduced immensely in 2020. We have around 287 ships, like I said before. The U.S. Navy is projecting to build over 381 ships in 2042 as a forward-looking statement. Well, China has over 370 ships or, quote, platforms. So why is this a dilemma? Because of Taiwan. We see geopolitical tensions rising, and potentially China will go to war to claim Taiwan, in which the U.S. is preparing to fight in the Indo-Pacific's littoral waters to protect its allies. Littoral waters are shallow areas of a body of water that are close to shore. It's just that in-between space between the ocean and land. This is a really important word, and we'll come back to this later, littoral. There are a lot of littoral waters in the Indo-Pacific, specifically the South Chinese Sea, where China has built artificial islands to dispute the sea borders of other countries within the South Sea. The U.S. is still strongly committed to protecting Taiwan. Just recently, there was $571 million defense invest from the U.S. to Taiwan. For instance, the Marine Corps has been going through a complete change via Force Design Initiative. The Marine Corps has actually been deployed in the Middle East for a very long time, for the past 20 years. And now the Marine Corps has to be retrofitted from tanks, artillery, to a completely littoral water-based infantry with small unit reconnaissance and long-range missile systems to better align with the Navy. So that is the U.S. Navy dilemma. We are short-staffed, we have a smaller Navy, and the U.S. Navy knows the numbers are working against them. There's more informed and in-depth articles on this issue. However, we're going to keep that surface level. So what makes this an investment opportunity? So when I initially came across this information, I thought this would be a great investment opportunity. 2 to 3 years ago, I found out that the CHIPS Act is an infrastructure bill passed by Congress to incentivize companies to bring semiconductor manufacturing to the U.S. I looked at Applied Materials, AMAT, at around $80 and $90 and learned of their unique position for packaging in the semiconductor industry. And it's a very bottlenecked industry, kind of held by a few companies such as AMAT, Lam Research, ASML. The passing of the CHIPS Act has very huge benefit for these companies. For instance, Skywater Technology is a US-based company for semiconductor manufacturing. On Semiconductor Corporation, Intel, TSMC are some of the few companies that, are not in the US, but Applied Materials now sits at $163 today at December 21st, 2024. It's a very common thing for investors to watch government funding bills pass, and then the companies kind of near that bill kind of benefit from the passing of that. So the question remains for this investment opportunity is, if we're going to invest in companies, we need a long-term view. Which companies are best positioned to meet this new demand? Who has the resources to finance it? Who has the shipyards? Who has the workforce experience to execute and deliver? There are many companies competing for the U.S. government contracts. The U.S. government is the belle of the ball. The U.S. government has a close relationship between the Pentagon and the Pentagon City of contractors in Washington, D.C. There's a great video that maps out the entire military budget of the U.S. by Johnny Harris. I recommend that watch. Another interesting thing to keep in mind is the relationship between politicians providing jobs, getting contracts with the government for providing jobs to its own voters or constituents. So what that means, basically, if you're in a state in the United States and a bill is about to pass that could provide more funding for your specific state or county, though that's kind of a cycle with it in which politicians can invest in those same companies and provide jobs for voters at the same time. And it's kind of been considered a conflict of interest. So watching key political agents is especially an important signal in this. In total, the U.S. Navy budget for 2025 requested is $257 billion. The forward-looking statements for 2024's budget, this year, included military personnel at $60 billion, operations and maintenance at $84 billion, procurement at $76 billion, research and development at $26 billion, Milcon, family housing at $6 billion. What matters here is procurement. We have $32.4 billion for shipbuilding in the U.S. Navy, so nearly half of those funds are going to go into building more ships. Companies like Virgo Industrial, Northrop and Grumman, Boilinger Shipyards, Philly Shipyards, General Dynamics, Huntington Ingalls Industries. I've created a list in my blog post here, but essentially every year these companies are awarded contracts to either build aircraft for the Navy or to build new ships. Aircraft are really a huge part of these contracts too, so that's why Northrop Grumman is in there. Another signal is to see who China's sanctioned. China has sanctioned 3 companies actually this year: the Huntington Ingalls Industries, the Edge Autonomy Operations LLC, and Sky DO. Now the question is, who's really going to win these contracts? Like I said before, which companies are best positioned to meet this demand? Who has the resources to finance it? Who has the shipyards? Who has the workforce? To answer that question, we just need to look at what are the latest ships that have been built. The latest ship to be built is the USS Beloit. It's LCS, which stands for Littoral Combat Ship. It's, I think, one of 29. It's been created in Marinette, Wisconsin, built by Lockheed Martin and by Fincantieri Marinette, which is an Italian-based company that is helping us manufacture these littoral combat ships. There's that key word again, littoral. It's a critical word, and the construction of this ship, commissioned on November 23rd, 2024, could indicate the U.S. Navy is going to commission this ship more often in the future. There are smaller ships that can navigate between littoral waters in the islands of the South Pacific. Now, I want to get into the risk of shipbuilding and the failures of U.S. government spending. Investing in any company comes with risk. Building ships are multi-year projects. For instance, the Zimwalt was a 20-year program developed by General Dynamics Bath Iron Works. The U.S. Navy never got any cruisers. It's considered a failed project. The United States Zimwalt program cost $24.5 billion overall. That's $8 billion per ship to taxpayers. See, the system rewards people for contributing and keeping an eye on the revenue target, i.e. the contractors who are getting government contracts. And on top of that, there is a lack of accountability that's been cited. Contractors keep spinning their wheels, changing business requirements of ships from year to year with new updates with technology. I don't know if you remember that one scene in Transformers about the railgun kind of being shot towards the pyramids.
Above sea level 2932 north.
Kill track 5205.
Target acquired. Killing track
2, 1, fire.
That was never created. That railgun system that was promised was never developed. Now, I want to get into the second part of investing. While researching this company, I had an important question come to mind. Is it ethical to invest? Now, I usually get excited to find a new company, a ticker, and do more in-depth research on the company. There's a lot more I could kind of go into about the financials of every company here and kind of narrow down the list for a better, high-quality investment. However, I won't be doing that. I realize that investing in these companies means that those dollars go into developing weapons of war that will potentially harm others. So if you're looking for the next investment to 100x your returns like cryptocurrencies, you can stop watching now. There are many other videos and blogs out there for you. I think this is more of a philosophical question. Is it right to invest in a company that contributes to the military-industrial complex? I could keep researching and find a valuable company that is aligned best with U.S. Navy's funding to get an expected return. If you don't know this yet, but it's really obvious, but investor dollars goes where investors think they'll receive a return on that investment. It's never really about is this investment is going to create a better impact for society? It's always about calculating the math and getting a higher return on investment. It's just numbers, right? The mainstream view is that it doesn't matter what you invest in or do. If it makes money, do it. I've talked to many people about this topic, to my friends and family, and, half of them say, well, it's kind of irrelevant. The money you're investing is only going to be a small proportion. But I would say even our retirement portfolios and obviously our taxes, they invest around 1% to 5% of our portfolio. Here I'm talking about retirement, like 401ks, in military weapons companies. Here I'm going to cite to a website where they track all these portfolios and they give a rating on how much they're invested. But Vanguard, BlackRock, and Fidelity Investments, they all have about 3% into these military industrial complex companies. Now, even though the percentages are really small in the portfolios, they represent millions, if not billions of dollars into military weapons manufacturers and companies who are creating weapons for war. Then finally, like I said, we're complicit via our tax dollars to contribute to the cycle of U.S. government military contracts, incentivizing companies to, develop drones for warfare, or, ships, or advancing technology that could, decimate populations, right? I think that's just one big reason not to invest, and I think that's just a ethical principle I have to stand on. But I want this to be more of a discussion than anything. I'm going to present counter arguments. You could argue your investment is a drop in the bucket already. Get that return, right? Your taxes already contribute to the military industrial complex. It doesn't matter. Everyone's greedy. Just do it. These are really strongman arguments, and kind of reviewing counter arguments to my own perspective, which is a healthy thing to do in a debate, by the way, is there's only one clear counter argument for this in my mind, is that geopolitics and protectionism is really a necessary part of life for countries to prevent the total destruction of lives, cities, and civilized society. The question comes down to, what kind of society do you want to live in? For instance, China is not exactly a democracy. It's a socialized, consultative democracy, socialist consultative democracy. I would consider it a loose definition of a dictatorship. I prefer not to live in a society like China where censorship is the status quo. I think protecting Taiwan is more than just keeping a promise from that point of view, but is part of a long history and struggle between ideologies from the past between communism and capitalism. I would say today that the lines are so blurred because if you look at modern China today, there are huge elements of capitalism in their society. So it comes down to the individual. You should stand under your own principles and values you have defined on your own through critical thought. To prevent the war in the Indo-Pacific is important. So if you believe in preventing that, I think you should invest. Morally, this is the conclusion now. Morally, I can't invest in these companies. I can see the counter argument that investing is going to prevent the war or to fight for the principles that the U.S. historically follows, because I do believe in values of freedom of choice, freedom of speech, but that is what is great. I can make my own decisions here to invest or not, to critically think about those choices, right? Anyways, please contribute your ideas and discussions in the comments below. Also, all my cited sources are in the blog post, so just go there. And if you see anything, just comment. I will make corrections or clarifications on what I've said.